Despite already being one of the greatest teams ever assembled, the Brooklyn Nets got even better with some acquisitions over the last week. But in this video, we want to break down why the Brooklyn Nets super team dominance might actually help the Toronto Raptors in the long run. Let's get into it. Welcome NBA and Raptors fans to Amateur Hour Sports. This is the channel where you get NBA content with a focus on the Toronto Raptors at least 4 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. This is your Saturday episode where we're breaking down the Brooklyn Nets super team and its long-term effect on the Toronto Raptors. So if you like what you see from today's video and you want more of myself talking about the NBA and the Raptors in videos and content just like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below to show support to the channel. And also, I'm imploring you guys to check out our new channel, Amateur Hour TV, where we're doing plenty of stuff like vlogs, interviews, and it's more of a personal channel for myself. The link is in the description. The first video goes out in 30 minutes, 2 p.m. Eastern time, so make sure you check that out to show support to the brand. But let's get down to business for what we're talking about here, because this is our Raptors-based channel where we are talking about, well, not necessarily the Raptors as much today, because the Brooklyn Nets have been making moves, and last year the Brooklyn Nets were arguably the greatest team ever assembled. They have 2 former MVPs and 3 of the top 15 players in the NBA in Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving, making them pretty much unstoppable unless injuries come into play. So KD was healthy for the playoffs. James Harden was at about 60-70% of himself. Kyrie Irving was not healthy, and they were a Kevin Durant big toe away from going to the conference finals, where they probably would have went on to win the NBA championship. But regardless, they didn't. Injury stopped them. So the Brooklyn Nets, who are already this insane super team, went out, and you know what? We are still not good enough, and they got even better because Lamarcus Aldridge was with the Brooklyn Nets, and he ended up having to unfortunately retire early, but he has now come back to the NBA, and he has signed with the Nets. They also traded away Deandre Jordan, which was a big move for them to save some salary, save them from going into the luxury tax, and the money saved has helped them with the acquisition of Paul Millsap in free agency. Paul Millsap is 36 years old, but still has something to offer in the NBA, and I think he's going to perform a good role on this Brooklyn Nets team, who pretty much have just found their Jeff Green replacement. So I thought that was a big blow to them, but getting in Paul Millsap is going to be a decent replacement, not quite at that level. And Lamarcus Aldridge, even though he is older, Blake Griffin, even though he is older, they're not what they used to be, but they are still solid NBA talent, and Blake Griffin definitely displayed that in the playoffs last year. So this unbelievable team is now in place here. Like, they got Jahlil Okafor and Sekou Doumbouya, and they don't even need to use those players because just bask in the depth and the amount of talent on this team. They're probably going to go with the starting lineup of Kyrie Irving, James Harden, Kevin Durant, Blake Griffin, and then probably Paul Millsap, I think, is going to be starting in the center position just to provide that sort of Jeff Green role. As I said, he's not a true center, but I think the Brooklyn Nets have enough that they don't really need a true center, and their pace of play kind of fits the system with Paul Millsap. But on their bench, oh my goodness, the bench is just as good. Patty Mills, which was a super under-the-radar signing that they made earlier in the offseason. This is a guy who, is an NBA champion already, and he just averaged 27 points per game at the Olympics. This is a good player to have off your bench. This is a great score to have off of your bench. You've also got the likes of Joe Harris, Lamarcus Aldridge, like I said. You've got Nick Claxton, who, if you know me, you know I am very fond of Nick Claxton as well, a very young and ascending center. Bruce Brown is still there. He's a solid player off the bench, and Cam Thomas is now there, a player that they just drafted who is looking like an absolute steal, one of the co-MVPs in the Summer League. So the Brooklyn Nets look pretty much unstoppable. It's pretty much unfair, kind of ruining any sort of competitiveness within the NBA, especially if this team remains healthy, but they are at the epitome of talent. This is arguably, I would say it is, the greatest group of players ever assembled together on an NBA team. This is like the dream team of 92 Olympics for the US, basically on an NBA roster. Not quite that level, but you know what I mean. An absolutely overwhelming super team that nobody's going to really be able to compete with when it comes to playoff time. Now, this is where it can kind of get interesting. This is where we're going to spin the Raptors into play here, because the Raptors are obviously nowhere near contender status, and the fact that there is a team this good means the Raptors have absolutely no chance at winning an NBA championship this season, and probably not a real chance at winning anything in the next couple years, maybe a few years when you stretch it to like 3-4 years, where I really need to see how this core develops. But we have a very good young core in place. We've done a great job of putting young players all over our roster. The acquisition of Scottie Barnes in the draft was great. We still have OG Anunoby. We still have Gary Trent Jr., who is quite young. We have a lot of young players, young talented players on our roster who need time to develop, their own game, but as well as their game as a team. They need to work together as a team to grow as a team, because the Raptors are never going to get that high quality free agent, at least not in the near future. So they really need to ascend as a collective unit. And the Raptors, they're still 3-4 years away at least from being in any sort of contender status. But the Brooklyn Nets are here right now. And the Eastern Conference over this offseason has gotten a whole hell of a lot better. This is the best the Eastern Conference has looked in a very, very long time. I mean, and in terms of teams you could consider contenders, obviously the Brooklyn Nets, Milwaukee are coming off of a championship. I'm sure the 76ers think they are a contender. The Miami Heat are an outside team looking like an actual contender here. The Atlanta Hawks also in the mix, just fresh off of a conference final appearance. The New York Knicks, who were a 4 seed, got even better. The Chicago Bulls made moves in the offseason. The Boston Celtics with Tatum Brown are always going to be a threat. It's a very competitive Eastern Conference. And at least 7 of these teams are going to feel like this is the prime status for their teams, and they need to go for it with this current team. And when teams that are here right now, when they need to go for it, those teams need to make those win now trades. That is going to sacrifice a little bit of their future, but they need those win now trades to be effective now. And with the Brooklyn Nets being so good, the Brooklyn Nets being as talented as they are, a lot of these teams are going to have to chase a lot more than usual to have any sort of competitiveness with the Brooklyn Nets. Those are the win now trades that are going to negatively impact them in 3 or 4 years' time, especially the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets, I mean, you can't sustain this level of talent forever, money-wise, financially, because there's a lot of these older players on the team who are going to slowly start to regress to a point where maybe they're not going to be as effective for the team. They're going to have to look elsewhere. If they can continue to pick up players on cheap contracts, then they will still be effective, but I don't think Brooklyn is in that market where they can continuously have a revolving door of top quality talent coming into play, especially if Kevin Durant ever moves on, Kyrie Irving ever moves on, or James Harden ever moves on. But regardless, all of these teams, at least 7 of these teams, are going to have to go chase the Brooklyn Nets. So with all these teams clamoring to get talent, going for these win now trades and sacrificing a little bit of their future, that's only going to make them worse in that, 3 or 4 or 5 years time. Whereas the Toronto Raptors are in this pocket right now where they're going to be mildly competitive. I can see them coming into a playing position this season, but with all of that young talent continuing to ascend, the timeline is working very much in the favor of the Toronto Raptors, because a lot of these upper echelon Eastern Conference teams are going to regress in 3-4 years time as they make these sort of win now decisions. Whereas the Raptors are in this position where they're going to improve year after year until there is that striking point where they can make that trade. We made that striking decision as soon as LeBron left the Eastern Conference, and it was there for the taking. LeBron leaves the Cavs to go to the Los Angeles Lakers. The Eastern Conference all of a sudden opens wide up. The Raptors make that bold trade for Kawhi Leonard, and the rest is history. We position ourselves in a situation where we can pivot at any point. We make ourselves a good regular season team, maybe sacrifice a little bit of that top heavy talent for the playoffs. But when the situation is there, when the situation eventually presents itself for a more open Eastern Conference, the Raptors are going to have the opportunity with the assets in place, with the young players in place, to make that penultimate decision to go for it and really try to get that NBA championship. And there is nobody I would rather have in charge of this sort of plan than Masai Ujiri, Bobby Webster, the rest of the Raptors front office, who have proven to be correct on so many different occasions, especially for that 2019 NBA championship. Ultimately, we didn't like what we saw last season while playing in Tampa, but we can forgive a little bit of that because it is one bad season. It is in Tampa Bay. As far as this season goes, with so much competitive teams in the Eastern Conference, the Raptors are going to find it difficult to get a solidified playoff position, in my opinion. So with that in mind, if the Raptors aren't really fighting for a playoff position, we could see something similar to where Masai Ujiri says, playing for what? And decide that we don't really need to be like a 9 or 10 seed when we could be lower down and possibly move up in the lottery like we did in the last draft where we eventually picked up Scottie Barnes. So with the Raptors building around what they have now, that could be the more fruitful decision for the front office, but that will all remain to be seen. But what my sneaking suspicion is about the Eastern Conference over the next few years is that a lot of teams are poised to contend right now, and a lot of teams in the Eastern Conference are going to be going for those win now trades in the present, which makes them maybe regress in 3-4 years time, just when the Raptors are coming around and starting to get back to their contender status. That is what the trajectory certainly looks like for the Raptors. So with all of that in place, the future does look bright for the Raptors. The future looks bright for the Raptors when you consider the rest of the Eastern Conference. They are going to be in a prime position in a few years to make some key decisions to get themselves to that true contender status. Raptors fans, you are going to have to be patient with this team. It cannot happen immediately, especially Scottie Barnes. It's not going to happen absolutely immediately for him. It is a work in progress. Every team Masai Ujiri has been involved with, it has been a marathon rather than a sprint. But we can put our faith in this front office. They have not done us wrong many times before. They have done so much good for the city, so much good for the franchise. Keep your faith in them, stay patient, and things look bright for the future. So what do you make of this Brooklyn Nets team? Do you think super teams are ruining the NBA? I want to hear all of your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below, because that wraps me for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you are still here, be sure to leave a like on the video if you did enjoy, and also check out the other channel that we have just starting up today, Amateur Hour TV. The first video is going up at 2 p.m. Eastern time, about 20 minutes from now. Make sure you're checking it out and supporting the brand. You can check out other channels that we have, other platforms, the Twitch channel, twitch.tv/amateursports, the Twitch highlight channel, Amateur Clips, and remember to subscribe to this channel as well, as we look to continue to build on the success. Thank you so much for being a part of Team Amateur Hour. Other videos by the channel you may enjoy, and always remember, at the end of the day, I believe what I say, and if you disagree, that is okay. Enjoy the grind, and I'll see you again next time for another video.